My name is Rowan Vale, 30 years old. I was in my parents' kitchen in Fargo, North Dakota, the vinyl under my shoes still scuffed from childhood chair legs, when a crumpled receipt rewrote everything I thought was true. It wasn't groceries or a furnace repair. It was a Tesla, $88,880, purchased for my younger sister, Morgan. The ink bled a little where someone's thumb had pressed too hard, like even the paper knew it was carrying a secret. 2 nights earlier, Mom, Susan, had patted my hand at the table and said gently, "We wish we could help with the wedding, honey, but we're saving right now." Dad, Thomas, cleared his throat and nodded along, eyes anywhere but my face. I'd told them not to worry, that I'd scale it all down. Smaller venue, cheaper flowers, fewer guests. "We'll make it beautiful," I'd said, playing the responsible eldest daughter like a role I'd long ago learned by heart. I believed them because I wanted to, because belief is easier than admitting you've been made the household donor in a family that calls it teamwork. I wasn't looking for the receipt. I was looking for my birth certificate, license office appointment the next day, digging through the same junk drawer where our lives always got stuck. Rubber bands, takeout menus, a broken tape measure with its tongue of steel trying to snap free. Beneath an old coupon book, I found the corner of something thicker. I eased it out. On top lay the Tesla invoice. Under that, a small stack like dead leaves. A custom dining set for Morgan, $5,000. A gold bracelet, $3,000. 2 plane tickets to Hawaii, $2,000. The items lined up with a merciless, cheerful logic. I stared, letting my breath catch up. I've been wired for calm since I was a kid. Hold still, take notes, survive. So I didn't shout. I didn't storm into the living room where the news hummed, and my parents pretended the sound could cover their omissions. I slid the Tesla receipt into my coat pocket, the others beneath it, and stood there long enough to hear the refrigerator kick on and the clock tap out 3 seconds on the wall. Then I left for the bank. The teller looked young enough to still believe signatures mean something sacred. She clicked through screens, glanced at me, and turned the monitor with a sympathetic twist. Over 4 months, $12,000 siphoned from the family account I'd been contributing $2,000 a month to since grad school, because as Mom liked to say, we rise together. Withdrawal notes showed each charge authorized by Susan, flagged as household expenses. A second column, tidy as judgment, displayed Thomas's approvals. My name appeared only once, at the top, labeled contributor. "I'll need printed statements," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone in a courtroom. "Of course," she answered, cheeks dimming with embarrassment she mistook for mine. Back in my car, I opened the bank app and, with a thumb that did not tremble, canceled the monthly transfer. Confirmed. A green check. A small sound left me, not a laugh and not a sob. I took photos of every receipt, of the statements, of the confirmed screen. I started a ledger in my phone. Dining set, $5,000. Bracelet, $3,000. Hawaii, $2,000. Tesla, $88,888. Notes, all from family account. Another note, Grandma's house deed in my name. She left it to me because I keep things standing. I'd assumed she meant walls. Later, I would understand she meant names. On the drive back to my apartment, the frozen ditches flashed silver, and a cloud of starlings veered like spilled ink. At a stoplight, I opened Morgan's Instagram. There she was, captioned, "Treating myself," the gold bracelet catching the afternoon sun, the edge of a new dining table, photobombing in glossy walnut. The comments said, "Queen" and "manifesting." I closed the app because there is no comment box for the truth. I placed the statements on my kitchen table like evidence, then spread my wedding binder beside them for contrast. Swatches, cake quotes, a picture of a dress that would now be altered down one more size because stress has a way of carving. I checked my calendar, dress fitting tomorrow at 2 p.m., and underlined it. Not because I felt celebratory, but because movement is a kind of survival. At 5 o'clock, I returned to my parents' house to get my birth certificate and passport. "We'll order from that Thai place you like," Mom called when she heard the door. Her voice was light, too rehearsed. I stepped into the kitchen, The lemon cleaner and coffee smells knotted together, the same print of a farmhouse hanging crooked over the doorway like a sermon that no one believed anymore. "Found what you need?" Dad asked from the living room, still not looking at me. In our family, eye contact was a currency we traded only when we needed something. "I'm getting there," I said, and opened the sideboard where Grandma's photo lived between old tax folders. Her gaze looked past me, the slate eyes that used to tell me which truth mattered in a room full of polite lies. Headlights swept the front windows. A horn chirped. Morgan's laughter entered the house a second before she did. "Come look," she sang, and in the driveway the new car sat like a mirror that only reflected one person. She hopped out, hair perfect, joy loud. "Isn't she ridiculous?" she said, palms on the hood, like blessing a child. Behind me, Mom's hand found her throat. Dad coughed into his fist and studied the rug. The scene had the choreography of a play with one actor off book. "It's a beautiful car," I said, and even I could hear the evenness in my voice, the place the anger had cooled into a plan. "What's the range?" "Plenty," Morgan laughed, tossing me the keycard. "Enough to get away from anything boring." She didn't mean me. She never did. But words have a way of foreshadowing themselves. I pocketed the birth certificate and passport. In the hallway mirror, my face hadn't changed. Only the focus had sharpened, like a camera choosing the subject. I paused by Grandma's photo again. "You trusted me," I thought, and felt something settle. The deed to this house had my name. The account had my money. The receipts had their signatures. Somewhere in that triangle, a line had to be drawn. At the door, Dad finally lifted his eyes. "You know we love you," he said, voice soft, the kind he used when selling a story he wanted to believe. I almost asked him which budget line that belonged to. "I know," I said, and didn't add the part where love without honesty is just good manners. Outside, the cold met me like clarity. The porch light buzzed, and the Tesla blinked as if content with its place in the world. I slipped the master receipt deeper into my pocket, its edges warm from my palm. Some lessons arrive as ultimatums. Some arrive as numbers. This one was both. By morning they would text, maybe call. There would be words like misunderstanding, like family, like don't do this. But the doing had already been done. I started the car, turned the heat to high, and merged into the dark road that knew the way home. In the passenger seat, the folder of proof didn't rattle. I wasn't going to explode, I was going to excavate. The first text came at 9:12 a.m. Sharp. "Mom, we missed your transfer this month. Everything okay?" The second from Dad, 10 minutes later. "Call us. We need to talk." I didn't reply to either. Silence, I decided, would speak louder than outrage. Let them feel what it was like when something they depended on suddenly stopped showing up. By noon, Morgan called. Her voice bubbled through the speaker, sugar-coated as ever. "Hey, Ro. So, I'm hosting a launch party this Friday for the Tesla. Can you send me like $500? I blew my last paycheck on decorations, but I need this party to be iconic." I stared at my computer screen, the cursor blinking in rhythm with my pulse. "I'm saving for my wedding," I said, flat. "Good luck with the party." She laughed, thinking I was joking. "Oh, come on, you always come through. Family discount?" But I was already ending the call. The silence that followed was delicious. That night, I scrolled through Instagram. Morgan had posted a teaser. Champagne bottles, gold balloons, and a caption that read, "Celebrating New Beginnings." The Tesla gleamed under the parking lot lights. My parents liked the post within minutes. Of course they did. I didn't. I just took another screenshot for the file. 2 days later, Mom tried again. This time, the text came wrapped in guilt. "Your father's blood pressure is up. Stress doesn't help him. Please send what you can." My thumb hovered over the reply field, but I didn't type a single word. Instead, I opened the email from my lawyer, Elliot Crane, confirming our meeting that afternoon. Elliot's office smelled faintly of lemon and printer toner. He was mid-40s, calm in the way people get after seeing too many families implode over inheritances. "You said the house is still under your grandmother's deed?" he asked, reviewing the folder I handed him. "My name's on the title. I let them live there. No rent, no agreement, just trust." He gave me a measured look. "Trust doesn't stand up in court, Rowan. Deeds do." I nodded. The truth of it didn't sting. It steadied me. "I don't want to evict them," I said, "but I need the paperwork ready. If they cross another line—" Elliot adjusted his glasses. "You'll be prepared." Prepared, not revenge, not cruelty, just protection, dressed in legal formatting. When I left his office, the wind outside bit hard against my coat. Across the street, the Fargo Bank's glass doors reflected my face, steady, pale, unshakable. I crossed over, walked inside, and asked to speak to the branch manager. A woman named Laura Mendez ushered me into her office. I laid out my ledger of receipts, the statement of withdrawals, the photos, and finally, Stacy's message about the rumored loan. "I need to know if there's any debt opened in my name," I said. She frowned, typing into her terminal. After a moment, her expression hardened. "There's a personal loan for $10,000 opened 3 weeks ago, signed under your name, Susan Vale as guarantor." My heartbeat dropped to a crawl. "That's not my signature." "I believe you," Laura said quietly. "We'll freeze it immediately, but you'll have to file a fraud report." I exhaled, the sound halfway between relief and disbelief. I'd prepared for betrayal. I hadn't prepared for theft. When I stepped outside, the air had turned to ice. I texted Stacy. "You were right, they did it." Her reply came instantly. "Then burn it all down, legally." That night, I sat with Stacy in a corner booth at Maple and Cum Cafe, the one we'd haunted since college. She ordered coffee. I ordered something stronger. "You realize," she said, stirring her cup, "this isn't just about money anymore. They've crossed into criminal." "I know. So what's next?" "I'm filing the report tomorrow," I said, and then I wait. She leaned back, studying me. "You sound calm, too calm." I smiled faintly. "Because panic is what they count on. They feed off it." Stacy smirked. "Remind me never to cross you." The next morning, I filed the fraud paperwork. I handed over my ID, my statements, and the screenshots. The officer, a young woman with tired eyes, listened, typing notes. "When family's involved," she said, "it's rarely about money. It's about control." Her words sat with me the entire drive home. Control. That's what this was. Not need, not desperation. Just control disguised as obligation. At home, my phone lit up again. Mom this time. The message was a mix of pleading and manipulation. "We're sorry. The Tesla was a misunderstanding. We'll fix it. Please send the money again before things get worse." I stared at it for a long time, then typed back 2 words. "They already have." And I hit send. That night, as I checked my wedding spreadsheets, I added one more tab labeled Evidence Log. Every text, every receipt, every forged transaction, cataloged by date. I wasn't just keeping score anymore. I was building a case, brick by brick. At midnight, I refreshed Morgan's Instagram. The rooftop party photos had gone live. She posed with a glass of champagne, the Tesla shining below her. The caption read, "Best night ever." I didn't scroll further. I didn't need to. The storm I'd unleashed was already moving. They just didn't know yet. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to the empty room, "You wanted a new beginning, Morgan? Here it comes." The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was the sound of consequences beginning their slow, inevitable crawl home. The knock on my office door came just before lunch. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Only one person in my family knocked, like they were apologizing in advance. "Rowan," Aunt Ellen Lane said softly, peeking in. Her cardigan was the same beige she always wore to funerals and serious talks. She closed the door behind her and folded her hands, teacher style. "You've caused quite the storm, dear." I set down my pen. "I didn't cause it, Ellen. I just stopped funding it." She sighed, perching on the chair across from my desk. "Your mother's in tears. Your father's embarrassed. You've always been the level-headed one. Can't you try to meet them halfway?" My laugh was small and sharp. Halfway between theft and forgiveness? Where would that be exactly? Ellen's expression faltered. "They made mistakes, but—" "They took out a loan in my name," I interrupted, sliding the folder across the desk. Inside were the receipts, the forged signatures, the bank statement with my name where there should have been. Ellen's fingers trembled as she leafed through them. I didn't know it was this bad," she murmured. "They've been using my money for years. The Tesla, the furniture, the bracelet, the trips. And when I stopped paying, they just took more. So no, I'm not meeting anyone halfway." Ellen's eyes glistened, but I could tell it wasn't just sadness. It was the uncomfortable realization that her sister, the family's so-called moral compass, was capable of something ugly. "You don't have to destroy them," she whispered. "I'm not destroying them," I said quietly. "They're doing that themselves. I'm just documenting it." That afternoon, I met with Elliot Crane again in his downtown office. The blinds were half drawn against the winter sun, stripes of light cutting across the stacks of paperwork between us. He tapped the top page. The property deed checks out. Your grandmother left the house fully to you. You've allowed your parents to live there without lease or rent, which gives you full right to reclaim it. The word reclaim felt strange, like digging up a grave you hadn't realized you owned. I'm not doing this to be cruel, I said, my voice low, but they've used everything else with my name on it. I need to draw a line somewhere. Elliot nodded. We can issue a 30-day notice to vacate. It's a legal courtesy, not a threat. If they comply, no escalation. If not, we proceed formally. Send it. He studied me for a long moment. You're remarkably calm about this. I've had years to rehearse, I said. He smiled faintly. Then let's make sure your rehearsal gets results. By the end of the week, the letter was drafted, notarized, and on its way to Thomas and Susan Vale, certified mail. The silence afterward was heavier than before. No angry calls, no guilt-laced texts, just absence. Then, 3 days later, Morgan broke it. She called at 11:47 p.m. Too late for casual, too early for emergencies. You really sent them an eviction notice? She snapped before I could speak. They're freaking out. What is wrong with you? What's wrong, I said evenly, is theft, fraud, lies. Pick one. They're mom and dad, she shouted. You don't evict your own parents. You don't steal from your own daughter either, I said, but here we are. She went silent for a beat, and I almost imagined her realizing the truth, but then her voice hardened. You've always been jealous. You couldn't stand that they actually cared about me. The old accusation, polished by years of repetition. I'd outgrown its sting, but it still left an echo. Jealous? I repeated. Morgan, I paid for your car without knowing it. I covered your vacations, your furniture, your jewelry. You're welcome. You're twisting it, she hissed, but her voice cracked at the end. Good night, I said, and hung up. A week later, my realtor friend, Paige Dalton, called me, sounding uneasy. Hey, I think your parents are looking for a new place, she said. Small apartment on the edge of Fargo, cheap rent, month-to-month lease. They use me as a reference, said you'd approve. I won't, I said. Didn't think so, Paige replied. They signed the lease anyway. Move-in date's next Friday. And that was that. When I drove by the old family house a few days later, the porch light was off for the first time in years. Through the window, I saw empty walls and a stray piece of furniture pushed against the corner. The air outside was crisp and dry, but something in my chest felt strangely light. Morgan's downfall began quietly. At first, it was the small things. The designer handbags missing from her photos, captions about simpler joys. Then came the vague posts. Sometimes life humbles you, followed by a tagged photo from a secondhand jewelry store. The gold bracelet she'd once flaunted was listed for sale. I should have felt pity. Instead, I felt distance, the kind that's colder than hate, but safer than forgiveness. Mom and Dad moved into their new apartment without a word to me. No apology, no confrontation, just retreat. Maybe they thought ignoring me would restore their pride. Maybe they didn't know how to face what they'd done. Either way, the silence suited me. Back at work, I focused on rebuilding the parts of my life they hadn't touched. My wedding planner called to confirm vendors. I nodded through the logistics, pretending my hands weren't still sore from clenching pens. Elliot emailed an update. Deed fully secured. Notice period ends in 15 days. I typed back, thank you. Proceed as needed. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and watched snow drift past the apartment window. For the first time in months, there was no guilt threading through the quiet, only certainty. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Brenda Foster, my colleague, and one of the sharpest accountants I knew. Rowan, you need to come to the office tomorrow. Urgent. Found something weird in a property file with your name on it. I stared at the message, my stomach tightening. What now? I whispered into the glass reflection of my own face. Because in my family, peace never arrived alone. It always came with paperwork. The next morning, Brenda was waiting at her desk when I arrived, her expression grim and the coffee on her table untouched. Without a word, she handed me a manila folder. Inside were printed emails, a scanned contract, and a grainy photocopy of my signature. They're trying to sell your lot, she said. I froze. What lot? The one your grandmother left you, next to the old house. Brenda pointed at the document, the forged signature glaring up at me like a dare. This contract transfers ownership to a local buyer. It was buried in a client's file. I caught it because your last name jumped out at me. My pulse thudded in my ears. My parents hadn't just drained my savings. They'd moved on to my future. Who signed this? I asked, though the answer was already forming like a bruise. Thomas Vale, Brenda said, and Susan, acting as if you'd given them power of attorney. There's a notary stamp, but it's fake. I inhaled through my nose, slow and sharp. They forged it. Brenda nodded. I'm sorry, Rowan, but this isn't just family trouble anymore. This is fraud. By noon, I was in Elliot Crane's office again. The forged contract spread across his desk. The winter light from the window washed everything in cold clarity. He flipped through the papers, his jaw tightening. They forged your name, falsified the notary, and attempted to sell property that doesn't belong to them. This isn't civil, it's criminal. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. I want to press charges. Then we start today. Elliot picked up the phone and called the Fargo Police Department. Within an hour, we were sitting across from Detective Marla Jensen, who took the evidence with careful hands. Her questions were precise, my answers even more so. They used my identity to take out a loan, I said. Now they're trying to sell my property. I have every receipt, every bank statement, every text message. Marla nodded slowly, jotting notes. We'll open an investigation. You've done half our job already. Most people don't come this prepared. Most people don't have parents like mine, I said, my voice steady. When we left the station, the wind outside stung like vindication. By the next morning, word had spread. Fargo was a small town disguised as a city. News traveled faster than mail. My realtor friend, Paige Dalton, texted me mid-meeting. Heard about your folks. That forged sale is all anyone's talking about. Realtors are furious. Thomas and Susan's names are mud right now. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message until the letters blurred. It wasn't joy I felt, not even satisfaction. Just the ache of realization that I hadn't been paranoid all these years. They really would take everything if I let them. The next few days unfolded like a slow-motion collapse. My lawyer forwarded updates from Detective Jensen. My parents had been formally questioned, their signatures confirmed fraudulent by handwriting analysis. The lot sale was frozen, and the case moved toward criminal review. Meanwhile, my phone filled with messages I didn't answer. Mom, please, we didn't mean for it to go this far. It was just paperwork. Dad, you're ruining our lives. Don't do this. Morgan, can't you just let it go? They're your parents. Each new text felt like someone tapping at a locked door. I deleted them one by one. That night, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Morgan, but this time the tone was different. They repossessed my car. I stared at the screen. No emoji, no dramatics. Just 4 words that summed up the unraveling of everything they'd built on my back. A friend later confirmed it. The Tesla had been towed from outside Morgan's apartment complex that morning, impounded for non-payment on the fraudulent loan tied to my name. The car that had once been her crown jewel was gone. Her next post on Instagram read simply, "New beginnings. No glitz, no glamour." For once, she wasn't smiling. Days passed. The winter cold deepened, and the story of my family's downfall spread through the real estate network like spilled ink. The Vales, once respected, reliable, always invited to community events, were now whispered about in bank lobbies and coffee shops. Fraud, they said under their breath. Fake documents. Daughter pressing charges. It was everywhere. And then came the voicemail. Dad's voice, cracked and desperate. Rowan, please, we didn't mean for this. We just wanted to help Morgan. You don't know what it's like watching her struggle. We thought we'd fix it before anyone found out. Don't ruin us. I listened to it twice, the first time with anger, the second with exhaustion. When it ended, I deleted it. By week's end, Elliot called with confirmation. The fraud report's in motion. The sale's blocked, and the DA's office is reviewing whether to file charges. It's no longer in your hands. Good, I said. It never should have been. He hesitated. You're doing the right thing, Rowan, but it'll get uglier before it's over. Family cases always do. I nodded. I'm not afraid of ugly. That evening, I met Brenda for coffee to thank her again. She waved me off, brushing sugar off the table. Don't thank me. Just promise me you'll never let them gaslight you again. I won't, I said. We sat in silence for a while, the hum of the espresso machine filling the air. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel heavy. When I got home, I stood by the window of my apartment overlooking the snowy street. Below, the city pulsed with lights, steady, indifferent, alive. My reflection stared back at me, pale but sure. I'd spent my whole life being the responsible daughter, the fixer, the provider. Now I was something new, the boundary, the consequence. I whispered to my reflection, You wanted everything in my name. Now you'll remember what that name is worth. Outside, the snow kept falling, soft, relentless, covering the city in clean, white silence. 3 months later, the snow had melted, and so had whatever illusions I'd still had about family loyalty. The air in Fargo had that brittle, early spring chill that makes everything smell like change. By then, I'd stopped waiting for updates from Detective Jensen. The case had its own life now, one that didn't require my anger to keep it moving. When Kyle, my cousin, called that morning, his tone was careful, like he was tiptoeing around broken glass. "Rowan, I thought you should know. Your parents, they're not doing great." I didn't say anything, just listened. They moved out of that apartment near 10th Street. Couldn't afford it anymore. Susan's working retail now, and Thomas picked up a warehouse job. Their old friends don't return calls. It's bad. I let the words settle. "They made their choices," I said finally. Kyle sighed. "Yeah, still, it's rough to see." After we hung up, I sat at my desk for a long time, watching sunlight slide across the wall. There was no triumph in their downfall, just a quiet, exhausted certainty that some debts aren't mine to pay anymore. By April, I'd left Fargo. My fiancé and I moved to Bismarck into a 2-bedroom apartment overlooking the Missouri River. The boxes smelled faintly of old receipts and new beginnings. He unpacked the cookware while I set up my laptop by the window. "This is our reset," he said, kissing the top of my head. "No ghosts, no guilt." I smiled, though a part of me wondered if ghosts ever really stay behind. Work came easily again. I shifted to remote accounting, running spreadsheets for clients who'd never heard of the Vale family scandal. Between tasks, I started writing. First small journal entries, then essays. The words poured out faster than I could edit them. The discovery of the Tesla receipt, the loan, the forged deed. Not for revenge, but for release. I posted the first entry anonymously on a small blog site. Title: "Family Can Ruin You in the Nicest Ways." By morning, there were comments. A few at first, strangers sharing their own stories. A woman wrote, "My brother forged my signature on our dad's insurance check. I thought I was the only one." Another, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." The post spread, then grew into a small following. Each night, I wrote more. About financial control disguised as care, about guilt that comes gift-wrapped in love, about learning that self-preservation isn't cruelty. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. The truth recognizes itself. A few weeks later, Morgan reached out again. Her text read, "Can we talk? I don't want money. Just 5 minutes." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "One coffee. Public place." We met at a small cafe by the river. She looked different, smaller somehow. No designer coat, no perfect blowout, just a pale sweater and hands that wouldn't stop fidgeting. "I was wrong," she said before I even sat down. "About everything." I didn't say anything. She swallowed hard. "They told me you didn't care, that you were selfish. I believed them because it was easier than admitting they were lying to all of us." Her voice cracked. "I used what they gave me, because I thought it was theirs to give. I didn't know they were taking from you." I looked at her, trying to find the arrogance that used to radiate off her like perfume. It wasn't there. "They ruined a lot," I said quietly. "But they also taught me something important." "What's that?" "That love doesn't mean access." Morgan nodded, tears clinging to her lashes. "I want to make it right." "Then start by making it real," I said. "Get a job that isn't about appearances. Pay your debts. Stop pretending everything's fine." She managed a weak smile. "Already started. Marketing firm downtown. It's not glamorous, but it's mine." For a brief, fragile moment, I saw the sister I might have had if we'd both been raised on honesty instead of hierarchy. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. "Thank you for meeting me." "Thank you for meaning it," I said. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Some reconciliations aren't cinematic. They're quiet, like a door creaking open just enough for light to slip through. That night, I sat by the window while my fiancé cooked dinner, the scent of garlic and rosemary filling the room. The Missouri shimmered under the fading sun. I opened my blog and began typing again. Forgiveness isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's about letting yourself stop looking over your shoulder. I titled the post, "The Cost of Freedom." When I hit publish, I didn't expect the flood that followed. Dozens of comments, then hundreds. A community forming in real time. People exchanging survival stories, tips, empathy. My inbox filled with messages that began the same way. "You don't know me, but..." One caught my eye. "Your story made me cancel the transfer to my parents this morning. I can breathe again. Thank you." I read it 3 times. For the first time since the Tesla receipt, I cried, not from rage, but from release. My fiancé came up behind me, resting his chin on my shoulder. What is it? I showed him the message. He smiled softly. Looks like you're helping people do what you finally did. I nodded. Maybe that's what healing is, passing on the courage. The next morning, a journalist from a local paper emailed me. She wanted to feature my anonymous blog in an article about financial abuse within families. I agreed, under one condition: no real names. When the piece came out a week later, the headline read, "Inheritance of Silence." The closing line made me pause. Sometimes justice isn't a verdict. It's a life you rebuild after everyone stops believing in you. I printed that line and pinned it to my wall. It was the first time in years I looked at my last name and didn't feel the weight of theirs. It happened on a quiet Thursday evening, one of those still Bismarck nights when the air outside feels like it's holding its breath. My husband was in the kitchen, humming while stirring pasta, when a soft knock echoed from the front door. I knew that knock, slow, hesitant, like guilt learning how to speak. When I opened it, Morgan stood there again, no makeup this time, her hair damp from rain. She clutched a small envelope to her chest like a lifeline. "Rowan," she whispered, "please, I need to say this in person." The apartment smelled like dinner and lavender detergent, warmth she didn't belong to. I stepped aside anyway. She walked in, eyes darting around the space. "It's beautiful here, peaceful." "It is," I said simply. "That's why I protect it." She nodded, her lips trembling. "I've been better, paying rent, paying off debt. I even bought Mom's old sewing machine to fix clothes for extra cash." "That's good." She hesitated, then held out the envelope. "This isn't much, but it's a start. $2,000. The first payment to make up for everything I took from you. I know it'll never cover what they did, but it's mine. Earned." I stared at it, her hands shaking, the paper edges soft with rain. For years, money had been the language of our family's betrayal. But this felt different, a sentence rewritten. "I don't want your money," I said softly. She blinked, confused. "But I thought—" "What I want," I said, "is for you to stop seeing me as a debt collector and start seeing yourself as someone capable of more than surviving on other people's effort." Tears welled in her eyes. "You really don't hate me?" I took a breath. "No, Morgan. I stopped hating you the moment I stopped letting you hurt me." She exhaled, a sound somewhere between a sob and relief. Then she nodded, tucked the envelope back into her coat, and whispered, "Thank you." When I closed the door behind her, my husband looked up from the kitchen. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, my voice soft. "Just another ghost saying goodbye." Weeks passed. The case against my parents moved quietly through the system, stripped of drama, reduced to file numbers and legal terms. Forgery, identity theft, attempted fraud. I didn't attend the hearings. My lawyer did. The law would handle what I no longer needed to carry. One afternoon, Elliot called with the update. "The court's closing the case. Restitution unlikely, but their financial restrictions will stay in place. They won't be able to open new credit lines for years." I thanked him, hung up, and realized I felt nothing. No victory, no bitterness, just release. I was free. That summer, the blog took on a life of its own. Thousands of readers turned into a community. They shared stories of mothers stealing college funds, brothers draining inheritances, cousins forging wills. I moderated comments between work calls, answering messages from strangers who called me the girl who fought back. A small publisher reached out about compiling my posts into a book. I laughed at first. Me, writing a book? But the editor said, "You've already written one. You just lived it before you typed it." The title they suggested made me pause. Boundaries have my name on them. Late one evening, I sat on the balcony with my husband. The Missouri River shimmered beneath the dusk sky, the same quiet water that had carried away so much noise from my past. He turned to me. "Do you ever think about them?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not the way I used to. It's like remembering an old house you moved out of. You can still picture the rooms, but you wouldn't go back." He smiled, setting down his glass. "You did more than move out. You rebuilt." A gust of warm wind brushed past us, carrying the faint scent of lilac and river salt. For a moment, I thought about that night years ago in Fargo. The receipt, the Tesla, the way betrayal had burned through me like fire. I thought about the version of myself who stood there, silent but ready. She didn't know then that silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. She didn't know that losing her family would make room for a better one. And she didn't know that someday, strangers across the world would read her story and see themselves in it. A month later, a small package arrived. No return address, just my name in neat handwriting I almost didn't recognize. Inside was a silver bracelet, simple, no gemstones, just a tiny engraving on the inside. Time owed, time earned. It wasn't from my parents. It wasn't from Morgan. It was from me, because I'd ordered it weeks earlier, a private reminder of everything I'd learned. Time owed to the people who used me. Time earned back when I chose myself. I ended my next blog post with these words. Sometimes justice doesn't look like punishment. It looks like peace. The comments poured in again. Gratitude, stories, confessions. I read everyone, smiling quietly. Then I closed the laptop, leaned into my husband's shoulder, and let the sound of the river fill the room. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a daughter fighting for fairness. I felt like a woman who'd finally won her life back.